Coinage's Crypto Project of the Year celebration is back, spotlighting the top projects in crypto, including this matchup between THORChain and Helium. Decentralized cross-chain swapping protocol THORChain has exploded in 2024 after integrating with major wallet after major wallet. Now, it's implementing a burn mechanic that could see its Rune token repeat the 400% rally it had last cycle. Meanwhile, Helium, which is powering its own decentralized wireless network, has blossomed into a DePIN darling, even being utilized by major telecoms around the world to offload peak data surges. So which project deserves to be crowned crypto's project of the year? You decide. Head to coinage.media to vote. All right, people say there might not be too many real-life use cases for crypto or Web3 in the world, but excited on this edition of Crypto Project of the Year to be digging into two, or one, that is very important in the world of Web3 as an example to point to. Nominated as one of the top projects this year. Very excited to have on with us the co-founder of Helium, Amir Haleem on Coinage. Amir, thanks so much for hopping on, man.
Yep, thanks for having me.
And it's exciting because this one came to us from Sean Farrell and Fundstrat, a huge proponent of what you guys are doing at Helium. And for those who don't know, I guess the way to describe it would be, the backbone of DePIN, the idea of decentralizing data, hotspots, your background in that world. And just want to get into, maybe for those who don't know, what is Helium?
Yeah, I obviously like to think of Helium as like the first DePIN, really, which was the first real attempt at a physical network that exists in the real world that isn't just digital. And Helium is really all about how do we rebuild wireless infrastructure in a more distributed, decentralized, quite frankly, like sustainable way. I don't necessarily mean sustainable from like a environmental point of view, but from an economic point of view. So Helium is really like, how do we build wireless networks for all kinds of things, whether it's Internet of Things, little sensor devices that are like this big, or networks that serve cell phones, laptops, and tablets, which is, kind of where we're focused today. But putting that in the hands of a community and giving them an economic model that actually makes sense for them to participate is really what Helium is all about.
And in terms of what THORChain is all about, similarly leaning into decentralization to power permissionless swaps and trading, all kinds of different things in DeFi. JP Thor back on with us to describe how THORChain had a hell of a year in 2024. JP, man, it's good to see you again, but I just kind of always want to start with, for those who don't know what THORChain's all about, what exactly is the way you describe it to people who hadn't discovered it before?
THORChain allows you to swap Bitcoin to ETH directly in your wallet. And that's these liquidity pools, which THORChain manages through its network. It's the basis of how THORChain makes money for its liquidity providers and nodes. And it's a big year because we have been busy rolling out an app layer. And an app layer on top of THORChain allows essentially developers to deploy DeFi apps to use native liquidity in various different verticals. So big year, super excited.
Yeah, big year for both of you guys in terms of already establishing kind of, I think, the legitimacy of the projects and then ramping it up successfully and pretty emphatically. And Amir, I think on your side, in terms of powering kind of data, if you look at the blueprint, or the footprint, I should say, rather, in terms of where Helium's used, y'all are leaning into expansion, I believe, in Mexico as well as Florida and other parts of the U.S. I mean, how has it been in terms of rolling out the technology after it's been established to really, I guess, accelerate things in 24?
I think Helium historically has done a really good job of building the supply side of the network. So I think Helium probably most well known for its IoT network, which at one point was up to like up to 1 million hotspots. And a hotspot in our universe is like basically like a little wireless access point, almost like a miniature cell tower that you stick up in your house or on your roof or in a coffee shop or whatever. And then as subscribers or users get close to it, they start to use that hotspot and you get paid for that. That's sort of the easiest way of thinking about it. We launched a mobile network in 22 or 23 And that was, rather than catering to little sensors and Internet of Things devices, really focused on cell phones and cell phone users. Along with that, also launched a subscriber service called Helium Mobile, which is, literally a cell phone company where you can become a subscriber. We partnered with T-Mobile. So if you are a cell phone user of the Helium Mobile service, you are either using the T-Mobile network or the Helium network, depending on where you are. So if you're within range of a hotspot, you'll be using Helium, and if you're out of range of a hotspot, you'll be using T-Mobile. And sort of to your point about working with the incumbent industries, like that's a great way to actually build a usable service while your network is still growing. Wouldn't be great to be a cell phone subscriber that only has service, when they're near a house or like on certain blocks or whatever, right? And so it does take time to build these networks at scale, especially when physics are involved and it's not all in warehouses or data centers. And so that's been a really good way of getting an actual useful, valuable product out into the market. Have about 120, 130,000, I think, subscribers on the Helium mobile service itself. And then on top of that, the other way people can use Helium is that we have partnered with a bunch of the most well-known US carriers. We're not allowed to say their names yet, still working on those PR agreements, but you could probably figure out who they are. And the way that works is if you're a customer or a subscriber of those carriers, anytime you are near a Helium hotspot, you may actually jump onto the Helium hotspot and be using that and never really realize it, right? So all the authentication happens automatically. It's all done through SIM cards and certificates. So you don't have to like join Wi-Fi networks. You don't have to look for Wi-Fi networks. You don't have to do anything. It all happens in this sort of automagic way. And so that's been wildly successful. I think we're moving 20, 30 terabytes a day of data. I think probably 14 or 15 terabytes a day for those offload partners. So generally things are picking up and looking good, and we're focused just on building the network even bigger at this point.
Yeah, I think it's pretty fascinating to watch all that play out. And again, the similarities here are pretty important to highlight because, as you say, working with kind of those incumbents to let Helium, I think, not only make it cheaper for the end user in terms of using these services, but also playing with the big boys, the entrenched incumbents, if you will. And JP, on the THORChain side, as we've kind of highlighted multiple times here on Coinage, the thing that I love about THORChain is just the idea of working with kind of where the money's at, where these users are, whether it's OKX, one of the newest people I think you guys added in terms of empowering swaps. I mean, talk to me about how important that is by basically being the best thing for these entrenched people to use.
Right, so we recognize that everyone's moving on chain. There's more and more layer 2s and self-custody solutions for the world's users, crypto users. So you have like OKX, Binance, Coinbase, Kraken, BitGet, Bybit, all running their own self-custodial wallet and layer 2. And as users go into these wallets and layer 2s, they want to do more things. They don't want to have to spend the money and send it back into the exchange and back out again, because that's the point at which the exchange can lose the user. So the exchange is now integrating with THORChain swaps and they keep their users in their wallets and give them the features that they want, which is, layer 1 swaps between assets. So yeah, it's been a big year. The biggest integrations this year have been Ledger Live, the world's largest hardware wallet vendor, now integrate THORChain for swaps. There's also mobile, BitGet and Trust Wallet, the world's largest mobile wallets, integrate THORChain swaps. And the world's largest exchanges are now using THORChain for swaps in their wallet. So it's a very, very interesting year to see this kind of, we set about building THORChain 6-7 years ago to actually see this one day happen, and it's now happened. So yeah, if you just keep grinding in the arena, eventually it will happen.
Yeah, both of your guys' projects, I think, testaments to that, and also, again, to accelerate in 2024, both well positioned, I think, not just from kind of the fundamentals perspective, but also from really now, I think, getting things right and leaning into it. And JP, since we had you on last time, one of the big things that I think it really just happened recently is the idea of burning some of the token that is now powering all of these swaps as well. I really do think this happened, only a couple days ago? And so, I mean, when it comes to that, you're also now finding a way to, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong here, but pairing kind of usage of the network with burning of the tokens that's powering the network, if I'm getting that correct.
Yeah, THORChain has a fixed reserve, and it pays that reserve out to its users. It has at the moment, it does about 100 to $200 million of volume a day, and the network nodes voted to implement a burn feature. So it takes 5% of all swaps, buys the rune off the market, and burns it. And the whole point of this is to reduce the circulating supply of rune to just network participants, so just nodes and LPs. So as these integrations take place and swaps hit the network, these exogenous assets, Bitcoin ETH swaps or stablecoin swaps, is taking rune out of pools, taking it off exchanges and burning it. And over time, over the next 5-10 years, you'll see the contraction of the rune supply around just nodes and LPs that actually hold and use the rune of the network.
Yeah, it's a very interesting kind of way, and as you said, that was approved by all the people helping run THORChain in terms of the actual technical providers doing it, and it was cool to see kind of a decision like that reached. And Amir, on your side too, I mean, I guess this is a broader question for anyone who's building in kind of, leaning into decentralization, doing things the right way in Web3. I mean, how hard is it as a founder building this out to kind of, again, ensure that value accrual is working? Part of the reason why we even kind of highlighted Helium is because someone who's an analyst was looking at it and saying, hey, this is one of the best bets, I think, in 2024 and into 2025 for the token value accrual. I mean, how important is it and how frustrating is it to see other projects maybe not do that correctly?
It is hard. We have a similar system to what JP was describing there, where HNT, which is sort of the native token of Helium, gets destroyed anytime someone uses the network. So those stats that I mentioned equate today to something like $6,000-7,000 a day worth of HNT that gets burned, which is pretty good. It's a decent start. It's obviously nowhere near the scale that we want it to be, but I think that's a good construction. It ultimately causes supply to be shrinking all the time, which I think is generally positive. Although we'll see, I fully expect over the coming years to start to see more projects with uncapped supply in the utility space. So that's going to be interesting to watch. But it is hard. I don't think we have gotten it perfectly correct at all. The Helium community is extremely active. We have a process called the HIP process, and the Helium community is extremely active in proposing changes. And I think we're up to like number 138 now or something on the HIP scale. So it's a decent system in the sense that it's always sort of improving, or at least trying to improve.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult in the sense that because decentralized governance is in place in Helium, it can feel a little bit chaotic, or that there's constant changes being proposed. And so depending on your lens, that's either extremely healthy and extremely good, or extremely annoying and feels like madness. But I think that's what comes. I think when you have people want proper decentralization, and Helium has been called the people's network, and this is sort of what you get with that to some degree, right? It isn't run by a CEO, and it is open to anyone to participate. And so I think that's overall worked pretty well. Looking at other projects in the space, there are certainly several what I would describe as like sort of Helium clones. I don't mean that in a bad way. There's a similar model, and they've gone for different tokenomic models. In general, I think the sort of high, fully diluted value, like low float thing that FTX sort of pioneered is probably the most destructive version of a tokenomic model, just because I think it creates a lot of risk for participants, and so I generally am opposed to that structure. But overall, I mean, I think people have learned from the things that we've done, and certainly some of the mistakes that we've made over the years. I mean, Helium's been running now we're going into year 6 now, so one of the oldest of the sort of utility projects at this point. And there's a lot to learn from what we've done, and lots of things have gone right, and some things have definitely not gone well. And I hope, I hope that we are a good, I don't know what the word is there, but a good example of like things that you can do well. We have done well on the utility side. Like there is actually a significant amount of usage on the network now, and
Yeah.
it's exciting. And I hope to see more of that, and more, novel and interesting applications of crypto in this kind of way. I think that would be part of success for me, is that Helium played some part in any of that.
Yeah, I do want to get back to you to wrap up in a bit there in terms of looking ahead to 2025 projections into what you expect to see and carrying over that momentum into next year. But before we do it, JP, just kind of the same question there too, because THORChain is also a project that I personally have been paying attention to for quite some time, and you guys have been around for a really long time. And I think it's always cool to see projects like Amir just said kind of lean into it in not being run so centrally, and also building in public and really kind of standing up for their own community. And I guess, that's one of those things that THORChain's always been really, I guess, following the real morals of Web3 in terms of being permissionless and enabling permissionless swaps. But now seeing the token piece of this and the burn, you were just tweeting about it. I'm just checking the wick, the candle wick on this burn. I mean, in terms of value accrual now in Rune and the token, do you think that like people are overlooking how important this is, or what is your kind of takeaway now?
No, I think in the age of well, actually, ever since I first got in crypto in 2013, people have always been trading meme coins. It used to be forks. When I first got into crypto, it was like forks, Bitcoin, Peer Coin, Feathercoin, Litecoin. Meme coins seem to be cycle immune, narrative immune as well. They just keep coming back. But these days, it's so manufactured and so easy and so commoditized to launch your own meme coin that we're seeing a barbell emerge, where we have so much capital and mind share being sucked into, flash in the pans and low potency memes and communities. There's nothing really sticky about these meme coins. Some of them are sticky, like Dogecoin. I think Doge is going to be definitely around for a while, and it's emerging as an interesting layer one now, actually, compared to the millions of Solana and ERC20 meme coins. And then you've got this kind of like high velocity, like low potency memes, to these highly potent, low velocity but high inertia memes, like Bitcoin and Dogecoin, that drawing a barbell. And you got projects like THORChain, who makes $500,000 to $1 million in cash flow a day. That is actually driving real fundamental value to its users. You actually want to use THORChain. You actually need it. People want it to exist and use it every day. But it's not this kind of crazy flash in the pan. It's been around for many years. So we do have to compete in a marketplace of attention.
Mm-hmm.
And as a project, like you're saying, you need to do things to attract attention and keep your engagement. If you're a really good but boring project, you're just going to have to grind it out for a long time. If you're a good project, but you can also compete in the arena for attention, then you can attract mind share and start using THORChain. It's interesting. THORChain doesn't actually need attention, because it's ultimately its main user is actually the wallet developer and the each service. So it's actually trying to market itself out to wallet developers and users who need THORChain integrated for swaps. But that's not to say that all those swaps are extremely important to THORChain. It's not the be all and end all. In 2025, THORChain is rolling out an app layer. So actually, it does need to compete for developers and DeFi users who want to use THORChain to do, they'll have an app layer with money markets, lending, savings, stablecoin even into next year. So THORChain is going to re-emerge in 2025 as almost like an L1, like a Solana level L1, to enable developers to ship coins and projects and apps, and so it does need to compete for that attention. So doing things like a burn and various other things like that are important.
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting to see as kind of like the chapters that are there for these journeys. And Amir, as we kind of look ahead to 2025, I guess, you can have kind of really huge new features thrown in there, Or if you're finding success, you just kind of lean into those too. How is Helium kind of looking at, I guess, the roadmap for 25? What should our viewers know about all that momentum that we just discussed in 24 being carried over into next year?
Yeah, I just want to do more. Want to do more of it. You know, more partnerships with existing carriers, more subscribers for our own carrier, more coverage. Yeah, I mean that's sort of it. You know, that our roadmap is we've been sort of posting this meme-like roadmap of increased coverage, reduced bills, and that's sort of what Helium is all about ultimately. Sort of a little bit differently to what JP was talking about. We do need a lot of attention, and we do need a sort of flywheel building, because the network that ultimately gets used is built by the community and by the users. So there is sort of a flywheel effect that has to happen, and you know it is hard to sustain that over very long periods of time, right? It's you know, Helium has been around for such a long time now. We sort of constantly have to keep pushing this and reaching sort of new audiences and sort of better understanding what people want and what they need. But yeah, that for 2025, I think I would just expect more growth and more of the same. Like, we've got a bunch of big partnerships and announcements to come that we're super excited about. Some of them are sort of quasi-known, like we've been working with Telefonica in Mexico, and we expect that that relationship to expand in by the end of the year. And then we've got a bunch of new stuff that no one knows about that I think we'll be announcing sooner than later. And all of that is to the same end, which is more network coverage, more usage, and more value at the end of the day.
Well, we've got to have you back on as you can make those announcements for sure. And you know, I can't believe, honestly, this is the first time we've had you on, so I'm grateful that we're able to spotlight Helium now. And JP, on your side, I don't think this list can get much bigger, to be honest with you, in terms of integrations. Just looking at kind of these names in Ledger, OKX, Trust, as you already mentioned, like, I guess you can keep adding existing wallets that'll use THORChain. But as you said, it seems like it's a little bit of a pivot or shift into now what comes next in 25.
Yeah, so the protocol will keep adding more integrations, and these integrations are now coming thick and fast with THORChain. It offers the best price execution. So believe it or not, as more and more integrations happen, the execution quality on THORChain just increases as the markets get healthier, the ARBs get healthier, the pools get deeper. So it's a protocol that can scale well with integrations. And these liquidity pools and all the volume flowing over the top of it, all the users of these pools are now deriving an app layer. So they will give an app layer accurate price feeds, one transaction access to swaps and L1 assets. And we're super excited to be rolling it out next year. We partnered up with a blockchain called Kujira, which is a collection of DeFi developers, and building an amazing user experience in July this year. And we've been working with them over the last 4 months to roll out this app layer. So 2025 will be about THORChain emerging as a L1 chain that enables users and developers to ship DeFi apps to their users.
Yeah, it's pretty, I mean, again, I think there's no reason why anyone could say these projects don't deserve to be in Crypto Project of the Year. I just got to say congrats to you guys both for kind of what you've built, not only just this year, but for all the years that came before it. Very excited to see what comes next in 2025 from you two, both JP Thor and Amir Haleem, co-founder of Helium. Guys, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us today.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us.